the untold story behind Disturbed's biggest hit. Sometimes a song doesn't just make a band famous, it defines an entire generation of heavy music. In the year 2000, four musicians from Chicago released a song with an opening sound that no one had ever heard before. 2 decades later, people can recognize it within a single second. This is the untold story behind Disturbed's Down with the Sickness. By the late 1990s, heavy music was changing. Grunge had dominated most of the decade, and bands like Korn, Limp Bizkit, and Slipknot were creating a new wave of aggressive metal. Somewhere in Chicago, another band was trying to find its own identity. That band was Disturbed. The group had formed several years earlier, but everything changed when David Draiman became their singer. Before joining the band, Draiman had actually studied political science and business administration. He wasn't expected to become one of heavy metal's most recognizable voices. When he auditioned, the chemistry was immediate. The band knew they had found something special. Still, talent doesn't guarantee success. Like thousands of other bands, Disturbed loaded their own equipment, drove themselves to clubs, handed out demo tapes, and played anywhere that would let them perform. Night after night, they worked to build a following in Chicago, hoping someone important would notice. Eventually, they caught the attention of Giant Records. Now they had one opportunity, one album, one chance to prove they belonged. The band entered Groovemaster Studios in Chicago with producer Johnny Kaye to record what would become their debut album, The Sickness. Among the songs they were developing was one built around an unusual drum groove. Drummer Mike Wengren had written a pounding, tribal rhythm that immediately stood apart from traditional heavy metal. Guitarist Dan Dunnigan layered a thick, down-tuned guitar riff over the beat, while bassist Steve "Fuzz" Kamak locked into the groove. The song sounded powerful, but something was missing. There was an empty space at the beginning. As they rehearsed, David Draiman did something completely spontaneous. He leaned into the microphone and unleashed an animal-like vocal that nobody had planned. Ooh, wah, ah, ah, ah. Nobody in the room had heard anything like it before. It wasn't written, it wasn't rehearsed, it simply happened. Later, Draiman explained that the tribal rhythm made him feel primitive, almost animalistic, and the sound just came out naturally. Instead of removing it, they kept it. None of them realized they had just created one of the most recognizable openings in rock history. When listeners hear that sound today, they don't need another note. They already know exactly what's coming. Musically, Down with the Sickness was unlike almost anything on rock radio. The guitars were crushing but incredibly precise. The drums sounded mechanical yet tribal. Draiman wasn't simply screaming. He mixed melody, rhythm, spoken word, and aggression into a vocal style that instantly separated Disturbed from every other band on the radio. Then came the lyrics. Many listeners believed the song was about abuse because of the disturbing spoken section near the end. Radio stations often removed that section completely. The music video left it out as well. Over the years, David Draiman explained that the confrontation wasn't meant to be taken literally. To him, it represented control, oppression, and fighting against forces trying to dominate the individual. That interpretation has been debated ever since, but the controversy only made people talk about the song even more. When The Sickness was released in March of 2000, the band's first single was actually Stupefy. It introduced listeners to Disturbed, but it was Down with the Sickness that exploded. Rock stations couldn't stop playing it. Fans immediately connected with its unforgettable opening and relentless energy. The song spread quickly through concerts, MTV, sports arenas, movies, television shows, and eventually video games. Within a short time, Disturbed had gone from playing clubs in Chicago to selling out arenas around the world. The debut album eventually sold millions of copies. The song became the soundtrack of an entire era of hard rock and metal. More than 25 years later, Down with the Sickness remains Disturbed's signature song. It's almost always saved for the end of their concerts, because the audience reaction is instant. The moment David Draiman steps to the microphone, everyone knows what's about to happen. What's fascinating is that years later, the same band stunned the world by releasing an emotional cover of Simon and Garfunkel's The Sound of Silence. People who only knew Disturbed for brutal songs like Down with the Sickness suddenly discovered the incredible depth of Draiman's voice. Few bands have successfully owned both extremes, one of the heaviest anthems of the modern metal era, and one of the most haunting ballads ever recorded. Looking back, it's amazing to think that Disturbed's biggest signature wasn't a guitar riff or a lyric. It was an improvised sound that lasted only a few seconds. a sound that almost certainly would never have existed if David Draiman hadn't followed his instincts during rehearsal. Sometimes history changes because of years of careful planning, and sometimes it begins with 4 musicians in a Chicago studio, and one unforgettable. Ooh wah ah ah ah. If you enjoyed learning the story behind this legendary song, be sure to subscribe. Every week we uncover the untold stories behind the music that changed rock history.